Hi,
Hi.
everybody. Um, Sorry I couldn't be there in person. Um, I would have especially loved to be able to talk to you guys more personally, especially since it's such a nice, intimate group there. Um, Great opportunity to actually, talk to each other. And I love seeing the Center for Political Beauty just now. That was really fun and really interesting. It's the Tiger Project has got so many moving parts. I'm really impressed to follow along, and so I opened up a bunch of news articles and stuff online at the same time to try to because it's a little harder over Skype to piece it all together. And yeah, what an amazing set of projects there. So good job. And so basically, yeah, with the Yes Men, I mean, right now we're pretty consumed with this election in the U.S., this sort of crazy, bizarre roller coaster election. It's one of those weird times when you realize that like a really large percent of the population of the country are very likely to be fascists. I mean, that's seriously revealing and weird. I mean, I come from a place in a rural place where a lot of people are Trump supporters, and I don't know how they how they do this right now, how they still remain Trump supporters without realizing that they've also become this very ugly force. Um, it's very strange. It's like being in a parallel universe. Like I don't think of myself as being from a fascist country. I think of myself as being from a place where that tends to have imperial, foreign policy, and, and really, bad domestic policy, but then where fundamentally people seem like they're kind of like good. Like if you travel around, there's a lot of like friendly people who are not assholes. Even if you travel around and you're brown, you reach racism. You hit racism here and there, in an overt kind of way. But it seems like things have whatever was under the surface is really out there right now. So it's dramatic, and yeah, it does reflect systemic failure. So anyway, we've got a project about that right now, and that's part of the reason why I couldn't come to Norway after all, is that life just got really crazy with this, trying to juggle again many moving parts of one of these intervention projects. We tend to identify as activists. It's interesting thinking about calling yourself an activist or not. We often do call ourselves activists, but I've actually been a little bit uncomfortable with it for many years now, and that's because anytime that you self-identify in a way that that fits somebody's preconceived kind of political categories, then it seems like you shut down the possibility of communication, right? So if rather than being activists, it's sometimes more convenient to be, let's just say parents, because who's against that? You know, everybody has some, so like these are the kinds of signifiers or kinds of groups that we might form that don't immediately make people stop listening to what you have to say. And I think it's interesting thinking about how the Center for Political Beauty approaches it. I mean, we stopped calling ourselves artists a long time ago because in the United States that meant that we couldn't talk to at least half the population that thought art was bullshit, and that art was pretentious, and that art meant that you were not, you know, that you were basically from the elite. But now we may have to do more as well. Just, come up with more generalized terms that don't turn people off. I wanted to begin though with there's two things that are going crazy in my Facebook feed right now, and one is the election, and the other is Standing Rock, which is the battle against the pipelines. In that case, it's the Dakota Access Pipeline, but there's of course hundreds of other pipelines that people are fighting, not just in the U.S. and Canada, but all over the world. And so in Standing Rock right now, there's a bunch of a lot of people, including many Native Americans, Canadians, actually indigenous people from all over the world have converged there. I know there were delegations from Norway as well, who went over and were camping out. So because of what's going on there, I thought it might be fun to begin by showing you a video of the action that we did that ended our last movie. We've made 3 feature films about our actions, which are not totally unlike the Center for Political Beauties in that we are creative activists and we engage in storytelling using whatever means are necessary. And so I'd like to show you this last video. If you could play the video, that would be great. If you could play the video, this would be a great time to do it. Thank you.
So we have to work.
Yeah.
We need to get back in the saddle.
All right.
I mean, cheers.
Cheers. To settle.
Yes. We knew there was a way to pull the plug on big oil. But we needed some help. Ever since we met Gitz, we'd wanted to do something together. Posing as government bigwigs, we would infiltrate a Homeland Security conference and announce that the USA was outlawing fossil fuels and replacing them with renewables. And the best part? The new wind and solar power plants would be owned by native tribes as partial reparations for genocide.
To actually have white people wearing bands that say native headdress instead of a feather, a windmill, this is us making fun of the American ideal of what it is to be Indian.
This would truly be a second Thanksgiving. I told the conference that I represented General Colin Powell, and they were pumped to have him speak.
So our speakers are running just a tad late. We're not going to worry about it. General Colin Powell is coming to speak to us, and he's bringing a couple of colleagues.
General Powell, of course, would not show up, but his colleagues were nearly there.
Oh my god, you guys. Is this not going to be a total giveaway?
No.
Is there a way to, maybe to make it a little less like it is?
Who's the other person?
Well, the admiral, and he's followed by the deputy of the Secret Service. So you've got 2 exceedingly senior people.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to just confirm with them because he's so late. I'm beginning to wonder what's going on.
Mr. Benedict Gordon. I'm Barbara Alexander. I'm so glad to meet you.
Hello. Hi. I'm nervous. Me and Tito are sitting down. We're trying to make small talk. Have you tried yoga?
No, not yet. I need to. I'm having a hard time finding the yoga pants that'll fit.
That's the most weight I've ever seen on her face.
He's a scientist, so it's...
Does he do a lot of where somebody went?
I don't know. That is a bad hair day. These guys weren't exactly tree-hugging eco-freaks. We had an aspiring Republican congressman, a 2-star general, lots of defense contractors, and weird security guards in trench coats. How would they react to an energy revolution?
Our first speaker is Undersecretary of Policy Implementation at the Department of Energy, Mr. Benedict Waterman.
On behalf of the Department of Energy, I'm very excited to announce today a great new plan that will do nothing less than convert the United States energy grid into one that's powered entirely by renewable sources. As the dire reality of climate change becomes more and more inescapable, people will take the future into their own hands, and historically, we know that popular resistance is a force that can only with difficulty be countervailed. A revolutionary energy program today is easier than a real revolution tomorrow. By 2030, America will produce 100% of our energy from renewables, establishing us once again as a global leader in confronting the supreme challenge of climate change. We're excited to be working with the Bureau of Indian Affairs and some of the largest tribes from Arizona to the Dakotas to site major wind and solar facilities that will provide a large chunk of America's power. The tribes will own these facilities. It'll provide an enormous stimulus to the economy and great resilience in the face of future threats. It's time for a second Thanksgiving.
I am Dana Slowhorse. I'm the Director of Industrial Development for the Bureau of Indian Affairs. I am a member of the Wenatchee Nation. And joining me is my nephew here. He's a fire chief, he's a war chief, a water chief, and he's actually also a midwife. He helps young mothers. There's a long sordid history between the Americans and indigenous peoples. And it always hasn't been a beneficial relationship, at least not to us. For the first time, we have a voice, and we will own, truly own, this new energy production. And that's progress. And it'll build us a stronger economy, a brighter future. He will give something to our children. There was a lot of work done on Benedict's task, because we want to acknowledge and honor that. And so I actually went and killed a deer. I tanned the hide myself. Take this gift.
That was good.
Mark this grand occasion between our two peoples. We want to acknowledge us with a round dance. I encourage everybody to join us together. Just form a circle around all of this if possible.
All the way around.
Yeah, we can do all the way around. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, excuse me. I composed this song for this occasion. I made it a simple song so we can sing it together because it's not just my song, it belongs to all of us. Way out here, way out ho, way out ho, way out here, way out ho, way out ho, way out here now, way out here now, way out ho ho ho, way out ho ho ho. The sun gon' shine, the sun gon' shine, the wind gonna blow, the wind gonna blow. That's all we need. That's all we need to continue to grow. To continue to grow. Way out there. Way out there.
It would be worthwhile, I think, get an opportunity to perhaps, chat with you or your staff, or whoever you deem appropriate.
What kind of effect do you expect this to have on the share price of the energy companies today?
This is ultimately going to benefit the economy tremendously.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
How did the midwifery come about for you?
So, yeah, I have a lot of sisters and
And a lot of grateful nieces and nephews.
definitely.
So we're part of Northrop Grumman. We're a large business, but very interested in seeing how we can support this novel cause.
It's fantastic. So excited.
Yeah, this is outstanding. I feel really good. It's a very emotional day. Great.
I was surprised to see someone from Northrop Grumman acting so excited. You weren't talking about weapons, you're talking about renewables.
You know, surprisingly enough, most people are not megalomaniacally insane. Even people that work for Northrop Grumman. And if they're given the opportunity to do what they actually believe in their hearts is the right thing, they go with it.
The fact that we could get all these people that we think of as being from the dark side to dance in support of renewable energy is that there are very few people who actually want us to continue on this fossil fuel path. And we have to force our leaders to actually do what we need them to do, and then people will follow. Except for a few oil company execs.
Good stuff.
Thank you. Don't forget that song now. You sing it anytime.
Can getting a room full of defense contractors to dance for energy revolution actually change the world? Not on its own. But what we've realized is being part of something much bigger than ourselves is the only way to keep going. And that's how we're going to win this fight.
Thanks.
So thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're still with us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
Can you see me too?
We can see you. At least your
You can see me and hear me. Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, Gitz, Crazy Boy, who you see there, and Tito Ibarra, who's playing Chief Four Feathers, are both out there at Standing Rock right now, kind of holding down what they're calling the front lines, because there's quite a bit of aggression right now coming from the authorities. So yeah, it's interesting. We released that scene in that movie. I guess that was about 4 years ago or 3 years ago that we did that action. Released the movie about 1.5 years ago, and a lot of one of the things that one of the reasons why we chose that topic was because the fossil fuel infrastructure really was becoming a frontline issue for everybody. And everywhere there are now new pipelines being built to carry frack gas or heavy oil. And so, since the kind of face of the oil industry, or the networks and the way that extraction is happening, the technology is shifting, it's kind of bringing it home for everybody in a way that it really hasn't been. And so we thought, it looks like that's shifting the way that the climate fight is happening as well. And so it's all, I think, kind of encouraging. Even though it's at the same time really depressing, since it's obviously, like most people say, too late to do anything about climate change. We have all these, terrible repercussions happening that, result in big waves of migration and, problems with the way people perceive refugees as well. So anyway, that project. What can I say about it that might be of interest to you guys? Well, one thing that I think is really interesting is everybody always says to us that they think that we only can do what we do because we are privileged white men. And I think that we don't really know that that's the case. I mean, we know that we are white men, or at least me and Jacques are both, quite white, as much as like children of Holocaust survivors can be. But what we found is for this last action, we were able to test it a little bit because, Gitz told us that we could make you can make business people do anything. He's the one who said, I can make them get up and dance. And we said, why? And he said, well, it's because of the racism. It's because they're so racist that they will honor anything that I invent. Right? So these business contexts come with their own set of rules. And if you're introduced as the most powerful person in the room, people are going to be, in many cases, more worried about offending you
than they are worried about. So in that context, their racism could become a kind of a tool, you know. And there's a lot of jokes in that thing that most people don't get, like, but if you watch it with a group of Native Americans, they're like laughing their asses off. So, for example, when he introduces himself as being from the Wanabe tribe, this is a common joke that natives tell or say in the presence of white people who are kind of like white-splaining something to them about natives, and they'll call them a Wanabe, which is a wannabe, like a wannabe native. It's which is this funny, you know, funny and somewhat unique problem that they have as a group, which is being simultaneously group at the same time as being the most disenfranchised. So they end up with a lot of Wanabes, who even also well-meaning Wanabes, who imagine themselves to be honoring some kind of idea of nativeness, you know, by doing something like white people putting on headdresses or beating drums in a similar fashion. That's kind of the type of thing they experience all the time. Anyway, so that's one of the things I learned there from Gitz, was that maybe, you know, there is a way to use the sort of tactics that we were using and to apply the racism of the audience in a power dynamic that would create interesting results. So these techniques, what we do, only works because we tie it into campaigns that exist and into social movements. So when we did this action about renewable energy, it was in consultation with a bunch of indigenous renewable energy producers groups, including a bunch of people who are a major part of the stuff going on in Standing Rock right now, like Winona LaDuke, who has a renewable energy project on the White Earth Reservation. And we were working with 4 other groups that were trying to apply this sort of as a principle, the idea of a kind of you know, indigenous owned renewable energy. It's kind of a perfect solution for, you know, social justice, pairing it with environmental justice and realizing that there's no real reason why we should all be paying a few rich people for oil when we could be making energy essentially ourselves. So whether it works or not is anybody's guess. If we had the resources to do the sort of social science we would need to figure out if it was working, I think we probably still wouldn't do it because we'd use the resources for other things. But in theory, somebody with like a couple $1 million could figure out the effectiveness of any of our actions the same way the advertising industry does. But we just have our anecdotal methods, which is like reading about it in the press, receive email from people, email testimonials, basically, that kind of feedback. Nothing very scientific. But what we do know is that it energizes people who are part of movements as well. So like this scene that you guys just saw, Winona LaDuke took around Indian country in the US and showed to thousands of Native Americans who were really excited to see it. And there are already people who are fighting the pipelines, but all it did was kind of, what it does then is it gives them a little more energy to fight. Because if you're doing the sort of hard work of activism, the organizing, the direct action, sometimes the very dull work of like creating databases of support, things like that, it's very fun to see how sort of flimsy the system is, and very fun to see something like the U.S. government ridiculed or the Department of Homeland Security ridiculed. So, so that's another factor, another feature of the work that we're doing, is that it's really about also energizing people who are already in the struggle. It's not even, I think, as important that we convert new people, although we have some evidence that we do occasionally because people write us emails after having seen the movies. And that's why we kept making the movies, was because they'd seen the movie and it kept us going, even though I'm not even sure if it's, I don't really know how effective it is, but it's anyway. So that's a little talking part, but I'd like to answer questions because I think I'm better at that.